Get that frozen food bag off the counter, wash your hands, and don't even think about heating meat in the middle of your microwave. Turns out, frozen dinners are more complicated than their easy-to-follow instructions. Keeping frozen dinners frozen between the grocery store and your home freezer is essential for food safety. The Food and Safety Inspection Service of the U.S. Department of Agriculture says that keeping food frozen keeps any bacteria, yeast, or mold present in the food inactive. However, if you let your frozen dinner thaw out between the store and home, these microbes have a chance to multiply to dangerous levels. If you allow frozen food to stay above 40 degrees Fahrenheit for longer than 2 hours, you should toss it. At the very least, you should put your frozen dinners in an insulated bag to keep them frozen between the store and home. New City Moving says it's best to transport frozen food in an ice chest filled with ice, cold packs, or dry ice. To prevent microbial growth, the coolest temperature shouldn't reach above 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Packing all your frozen food tightly together without any air pockets can help keep everything frozen longer. The USDA says the best temperature for storing frozen food, like frozen TV dinners, is 0 degrees Fahrenheit. It's important to note that the temperature in your freezer should never reach above 40 degrees Fahrenheit, or your food will be in the danger zone for microbial reactivation and growth. Because internal freezer thermostats sometimes fail, the FDA suggests purchasing a freezer thermometer to put in the freezer. If you check it occasionally, you should be able to feel confident that your food is staying at a safe temperature. You can buy a pack of 2 freezer thermometers for around $6 to ensure all your frozen foods stay in the safe zone. According to the FDA, if you notice any freezer burn on your frozen dinner when you open it, it doesn't mean it has reached an unsafe temperature. Many times you'll find freezer burn simply because the package wasn't sealed tightly, causing areas of your frozen dinner to dry out.
It's really very unpleasant.
Yeah, so is the money I lose.
Even when storing it properly, be mindful of how long your meal has been in the freezer. It's not going to have the same taste quality as it would if you had eaten it within a year of the purchase date. If you've had a frozen dinner in the freezer for a while, it's a good idea to check the FDA's list of food product recalls to avoid food poisoning. Foodsafety.gov says that you may be able to return the product to the store for a refund. However, if it's been too long or you don't have your receipt, you should dispose of the product so nobody else will try to eat it. You should also clean any surfaces or utensils the product has touched with warm, soapy water. Then wipe everything down with bleach. If you accidentally eat a recalled frozen dinner and think you've contracted a foodborne illness from it, the FDA says you should contact your healthcare provider to report your symptoms and receive treatment. Any microbes in your frozen meal will start to multiply if they stay long at temperatures between 40 and 140 degrees Fahrenheit, so thawing your frozen dinner on the counter is a bad idea. The USDA suggests 3 methods for safely thawing foods like frozen meals: refrigerator thawing, cold water thawing, and microwave thawing. In the fridge, the frozen meal can stay below 40 degrees Fahrenheit while it thaws. Just be sure to check the fridge temperature before you start. Cold water thawing can be safe if you keep the food in a leak-proof package or plastic bag to keep bacteria and water out of the package. Just submerge the bag in cold water, changing the water every half an hour. The process will take 2 to 3 hours for a 3 to 4 pound frozen meal. You can also thaw a frozen dinner in the microwave as long as you cook it immediately after defrosting it. Of course, some single-serving frozen TV dinners do not advise thawing before popping them in the microwave, so just be sure to read the directions on the box. If your power goes out, the best thing you can do for your frozen dinners is to keep the freezer door closed. According to the USDA, if your freezer is full, it should hold its temperature for 48 hours. However, if the freezer was only half full, it's only likely to keep its temperature for 24 hours. After that, you'll want to transfer any frozen dinners or other frozen food to ice-filled coolers. Alternatively, the USDA says that 50 pounds of dry ice can keep an 18 cubic foot chest freezer cold enough for 48 hours. When the power comes on, the FDA says you should check your freezer thermometer immediately. If the thermometer shows that the freezer is still 40 degrees Fahrenheit or below, it's safe to keep your frozen dinners, even if they've unfrozen during the power outage. According to the USDA, frozen meals at the bottom or back of the freezer should stay frozen longer. However, if you have any doubts, it's better to play it safe and throw them out.
Anything that's been pre-made and starts to thaw above 40 degrees after 2 hours, it's gotta go.
Even if you freeze and cook your TV dinner at the right temperature, you're still at risk of catching a foodborne illness from cross-contamination. According to the Minnesota Department of Health, the most common ways we spread germs to our food is from our hands, from touching our face, unclean surfaces, other foods, infected children, and pets.
What you start to realize very quickly is how many things you touch with those dirty hands in doing the simplest of tasks.
Washing our hands often can help with most of these issues. In fact, it's best to wash your hands immediately before touching any food in the kitchen, just to be safe. If part of the cooking process involves slicing open or punching holes in the plastic covering on your frozen dinner, you should always use a clean knife or fork. According to Live Science, you should wash with soap for at least 20 seconds and rinse with hot water to kill microbes that cause disease and wash them down the drain. Soap can penetrate and destroy the fatty membranes surrounding bacteria and some viruses, usually killing them. Those old food splatters hanging from your dirty microwave ceiling have the potential to drop into your food. Food safety specialist Ben Chapman told Vice the heat from the microwave should kill off any pathogen, but finding crusty pieces of old food in your warmed-up leftovers won't be appetizing. The worst-case scenario with using a dirty microwave is that it could contain bad bacteria that have grown in numbers since you last used it, which could transfer to your hands, other kitchen surfaces, or your food. So consider cleaning your microwave in addition to your regular cleaning duties. For extra cleaning power, you'll want to steam the inside of your microwave with a bowl of water and lemon juice or vinegar before wiping the inside with soapy water.
The citric acid in the lemons is going to deodorize, and that steam is going to loosen up all of the junk.
The USDA says you will often see labels on frozen meals that say they are cook and serve, cook thoroughly, or ready to cook, which should always be an indicator that ample cooking is necessary. 22% of participants in a study by the US Department of Agriculture, Food Safety and Inspection didn't realize that raw meat in a frozen chicken entree was still raw. Thus, looks alone aren't always a good indicator of whether or not food in your frozen meal is pre-cooked. The outside color and temperature of meat are never reliable for determining if it's done on the inside. Since some frozen meals come with uncooked or undercooked meat, it's essential that you check the internal meat temperature before eating. The best way to determine if you've cooked your frozen dinner thoroughly is to use a food thermometer. To be safe, the USDA recommends cooking any frozen dinner to at least 165 degrees Fahrenheit, which should kill off the most common food pathogens. If you're cooking your frozen meal in the oven, you can keep the probe of the meat thermometer in the meat while you cook it, so that you don't have to open the oven door before it's ready to eat. However, since meat thermometer probes are stainless steel, you'll have to resort to testing the internal meat temperature after cooking in the microwave. If you don't heat it enough and then let it sit out on the counter before getting around to eating it, any pathogens that are alive in the food can multiply to dangerous levels that can make you sick. Even if you nuke it briefly to warm it back up a little, if the food temperature isn't high enough to kill pathogens, you're putting yourself at risk. If you buy a large bag of frozen food that you can use to make multiple meals, preventing ice crystals is essential to maintain taste and texture quality. According to Whirlpool, ice crystals form when you place an item into the freezer that is warmer than the freezer or has condensation on it. So, if you open a large bag of frozen food and let it sit on the counter for a while before putting the rest back in the freezer, you're creating the perfect environment for ice crystal formation. Healthline says that when moisture migrates to the surface of your food and forms ice crystals, it can dehydrate the inside of your food, leaving it drier, shriveled, and tougher. Your food may undergo color and flavor changes or even develop freezer burn, especially if they stay in the freezer longer or there's oxygen in the bag that can replace the moisture in food. To prevent degradation in your multi-serving frozen meals, remember to return them to the freezer quickly and remove as much air from the bag as possible when you seal it. If you don't microwave frozen dinners correctly, you're likely to end up with a meal that's overdone in some spots and not cooked through in others. Following the directions on the package can help, but there are other microwave cooking tips to follow for the best results. According to GE, there's actually a correct way to arrange your frozen dinner in the microwave. Thicker pieces of food, like meat, should be located on the outside edge of the rotating plate, while thinner, smaller items should be toward the middle. To accomplish this, you should place your microwavable meal on one side of the rotating plate rather than in the center. Stirring your frozen dinner regularly and setting the food to rotate can help prevent cold spots in your meal. If you notice that some areas are cooking while others are staying cold, you may need to rotate the dinner. Some microwavable meals come with instructions to let your food sit before eating. This sitting time is not about whether or not the food will burn your tongue, so don't get in a hurry. According to Gadget Review, allowing your TV dinner to sit after microwaving provides an extra cooking period that can prevent unwanted cold spots and bacteria. Yes, it takes longer to preheat and cook a frozen dinner in the oven than in the microwave. However, most frozen meals taste better if you cook them in the oven. Ovens cook more evenly, while with microwaves, you're likely to end up with some spots that are overly hot while others are still frozen. While the microwave cooks a frozen meal faster, Mark Becker makes the point on Quora that you actually end up spending less time in the kitchen when you use the oven, because you don't have to stop the cooking process to stir, rotate, and flip. He also mentions that cooking your food in the oven will allow you to use an oven probe thermometer to monitor the internal temperature of the food to ensure that the food has reached a safe temperature before you remove it from the oven. Of course, not all frozen dinners work in the oven. If the packaging has oven instructions, you can be sure the packaging won't melt. If the package is not microwavable, you can always transfer the food into an oven-safe container to cook it in the oven. Chances are, it will improve the flavor and texture of your frozen meal.